Navigation online. Destination Zerg space. Confirm.
Starcraft 2, a game with the rather controversial choice to make it into a trilogy, has just released its next installment, Heart of the Swarm. Heart of the Swarm is the second in this trilogy, and as such it is an expansion for the original Starcraft 2 Wings of Liberty game. In Heart of the Swarm, we aren't walking around in power suits anymore, but instead we wear the slimy, spiky exoskeletons of the Zerg, as the name would so appropriately give away. But is this expansion worth putting down money for, or are we better off without this add-on?
Like riding a bike.
The story in Heart of the Swarm continues the trend of having one goal, but instead of the unrequited love goal of the first, Heart of the Swarm is all about one word: revenge. Heart of the Swarm is of course about the ever so lovely and ever so hot-headed Kerrigan, the Queen of Blades, and starts off a little after the events of Wings of Liberty. The temporary peace gained by Sarah Kerrigan does not last, and quickly Heart of the Swarm throws the entire cast back onto the warpath. Though this warpath never really reaches the struggle between the three races as it did in the older Starcraft 1 days, and often simply feels like it is trying too hard to create tons of drama and an heroic undertone, with moments and events that just feel completely ham-fisted. Though at the end of the day it does manage to feel incredibly personal, which certainly is something of a feat, considering huge armies, spaceships and monstrosities are destroyed throughout and within mere seconds. No, the story won't blow you away, it is largely forgettable. But what will blow you away is the absolutely amazing presentation and story delivery. It should really at this point be no surprise that Blizzard, at the very least, knows how to deliver story. And in Heart of the Swarm, cutscenes look better than ever, and there's quite a few of them too, from cozy chats to all-out to the death fight scenes. In between missions, you'll be taken to your Leviathan, which serves the same role as the Hyperion battlecruiser did in the original campaign. Though the side characters and dialogue are now mostly conveniently placed within one room on said Leviathan. Here these side characters will explain much of what is going on to you, and these side characters do manage to come over quite interesting. Much more so than our human companions did in the first at any rate. But the great presentation does not end here. Heart of the Swarm comes with an entirely new and amazing soundtrack that complements the Zerg atmosphere very well. Additionally, there's plenty of fancy new unit designs to make everything feel new and exciting. It is not a complex or immensely intriguing story by any stretch, and often it is sadly downright silly that will leave you with plenty of questions. But it is presented in a stellar manner by Blizzard that can quickly grab you in.
This ain't fair!
In the last 15 years, Starcraft has, unlike the goal of this campaign, not evolved immensely. It still very much holds the same mechanics of the original back from 1998. You are still creating buildings, you are still harvesting the same materials on the map, and you then still use these to send your limited army in at the right time. But the campaign for Starcraft 2 seems to be somewhat of a creative playground for Blizzard. The Heart of the Swarm campaign plays out more or less in 20 missions spread across 5 different planets, and the campaign itself starts off really slow. Really slow. Which is a bit odd considering this is an expansion we're talking about, so the training wheels should mostly be off by now. Eventually it starts introducing some different mechanics unique to this campaign. First of all, it touches back on another Blizzard game, namely Warcraft 3's hero mechanic. In the campaign you will have at least one hero, Kerrigan. She is powerful and will generally respawn once killed. Additionally, she will gain levels as you complete objectives, which can then be spent by making her even more powerful. Think summoning an army from the sky powerful. It is a pleasant idea, knowing that no matter how many disposable Zerg you'll be throwing at your enemy, you will at the least have one truly powerful unit you can always fall back on, and controlling Kerrigan is quite fun. Another big feature of this campaign is the focus on the evolution mechanic. Every unit, ranging from Zerglings to Ultralisks, can be mutated in one way or another. A simple passive upgrade at first, but more interesting are the actual full-on mutations. Every few levels you'll be given an evolution mission, and in these very short missions you can test out 2 different paths you can give your units. For example, Zerglings can grow wings, allowing them to traverse hills and leap onto enemies. Or Hydralisks can pick from 2 different upgrades, allowing them to transform either into a powerful lurker or impaler unit. This evolution mechanic allows you to hone your playstyle in the campaign more, and it is a nice addition that fits in well with the idea of the swarm. The test run missions are short and serve as a nice way to quickly test out new units before dedicating to one of 2 choices, and overall it just gives you a generous bag of new toys to play with. Missions themselves are reasonably simple and guided, and sadly there is no alternative levels you have to pick as there were in Wings of Liberty, so the actual replay value for the campaign isn't all that high. But the missions themselves are nicely varied, and introduce a ton of new little gimmicks that shake up the gameplay well and will keep you interested throughout. From defending a moving train to sort of stealth missions, where you go around infesting creatures, to all-out boss battles. The campaign can at times seem to forget it is supposed to be a real-time strategy game, but for the most part this huge variety of mechanics within levels serves to be a pleasant way of spicing up the campaign. The level of different mechanics you have available to you during the campaign is quite amazing, and this is where Starcraft 2 has always had its issues, transferring these campaign veterans to multiplayer. Multiplayer is very much its own carefully refined beast. Deft use of hotkeys and keen micromanagement are required if you want to stand any chance at all at competing with better players. And this is something the campaign completely neglects to inform you about. In fact, the campaign even lacks basic features such as injecting larvae, a key multiplayer mechanic for the Zerg. Luckily, with Heart of the Swarm, Blizzard has introduced a set of improvements, including an easier experience for newcomers to get into the actual multiplayer. If you now open the matchmaking screen, you are met with 4 options: Training, versus AI, Unranked, and Ranked, and these are very much meant to be played in that specific order. Training missions will grant you knowledge over some basic mechanics of how this multiplayer game pans out, and slowly drops you more into the deep as you are left with refining your skills against the AI. An AI that adapts to how well you perform. After which the test against actual players can begin with the unranked game modes, and if you are feeling confident, you can actually start competing in the ranked ladders. Furthermore, Heart of the Swarm includes automatic mining by workers and a quick button to select all of your army at once. It isn't perfect by any stretch, the multiplayer will still be a tough cookie to crack for newcomers, but Heart of the Swarm does make this transition a ton easier. Beyond these new introductory features, there's a set of others. A level up system for one, which isn't hugely interesting, but basically rewards you with portraits as you dedicate time with a race. A clan system, a completely new multiplayer interface, the ability to watch replays together with others, and more excitingly the ability to continue matches from a specific point within a replay. Lastly, something which should really have been in since Wings of Liberty is the ability to switch to a new region, allowing you to finally play globally with one account. The actual gameplay itself hasn't seen a huge amount of changes. It is, after all, something they need to carefully balance due to the highly competitive nature of the game. But it does now feature 7 new units. The Terrans get the Hellbat, an upgraded tankier Hellion, and the nasty Widow Mines. Protoss are left with more air and caster toys, the Mothership Core, the Oracle, and the Tempest. And finally, the Zerg receive the new Viper flying caster unit and the siege unit called the Swarm Host. In addition, there's a few little balance tweaks in place, such as siege tanks no longer requiring a research to siege up. To a newcomer, these changes aren't going to be hugely apparent, but the addition of these new 7 units and small changes are more than enough to impact the entire tactical landscape, giving plenty of new strategies for the more experienced player to find out. The decision of splitting the campaign up into a trilogy still doesn't seem to hugely benefit the story material. The struggle between the 3 races has largely faded away, and although it is a decent personal story, it's sometimes a little laughable. On the flip side, the way in which it is presented is truly fantastic, and the plethora of tactical options and mechanics create a highly amusing and entertaining real-time strategy campaign that is a joy to play. Multiplayer has received a lot of convenience and missing features, making it both easier for newcomers and generally just more user-friendly, which is always a good thing. Additionally, the new units offer tons of new strategies for the experienced player to find out, making this the perfect time to get back into the saddle. Although Heart of the Swarm doesn't reach perfection, Blizzard, like the prime Zerg scientist tells us, shouldn't stop reaching for it. I've been Haas from Haas Gaming, and I can certainly recommend giving Heart of the Swarm a shot.
Only focus is evolving the swarm. Seek perfection in all things.